Hello everybody, welcome to the Stella Mac Show. Where I get to have conversations with the most fascinating women on the planet.
Yes.
And where we get to talk about everything and nothing and the deep and the wide, and it is my absolute privilege and honor to be in conversation and to introduce you to the poet laureate of Cosmic Cowgirls.
Perfect.
Woo! And her name is Caron McCloud. And it was, oh my gosh, it was the most juicy delight when I met her. Is I had met her daughter, first of all, shout out Sophia McLeod Lewis, that I thought was the most fascinating woman on the planet. I still do, but then I met her mother. And I sat beside her at lunch during the first Cosmic Cowgirls conference, and within seconds, she fascinated me by her. She's a raconteur, she's a poet, she's a conversationalist, she's an adventurer, she's a rebel, she's a revolutionary. She is somebody that asks us to look at life from a different perspective. She asks us to be as big as we are. She asks us not to remain small. She asks us to step out into our lives and to look at our lives through a different lens, through a different perspective. And there is nothing more delightful for me than to hear Caron speak her poetry. And one of the things I love about that Caron talks about that is so important, that is about identity and saying who you are, who do you want to show up as. And Caron talks about, if you think about at the end of your life, and she thinks about it as you're on a hill and the wind is blowing in the trees and there's this tombstone, and on it is one word. And what would you choose that word for yourself? How do you want to show up in the world? How do you want to leave your legacy? What's your lineage? And what Caron McCloud has on hers is poet. And Caron is many things and has been many things in her life. She's been a very successful businesswoman. She's been a very successful dress designer. She has been a writer and a poet and a teacher. And she's been, to sit and listen to her talk about her life and all the things that she has accomplished, and still on that tombstone, that one word is poet. And so it is my absolute honor, privilege, and delight to introduce you and to ask for Caron McCloud.
Being the generation that I am, I always wanted to be on the Johnny Carson show. But when I met Stella Mac, that was over. I want to be on the Stella Mac show. Because she's always got my back. Thank you all so much for being here and giving me the opportunity to share with you. I'm going to start out with Sue Seller's favorite poem. That I wrote a lot of poetry for that woman. She was pretty inspiring, and she did a lot of paintings for me. And out of all of the lovey-dovey ones that I wrote for her, and all of the things that I thought were really profound, I'm going to read you her favorite. The Separatist. She no longer laughs with us. She perches, vulture-like, along the ledges of our conversation, waiting to devour any ragged piece of dead male-identified dialogue. Laboring under her vigilant eye, we struggle to give birth to our truths, whole, instant, parthenogenic, lest the stench of our divulgements invite attack. I fight to find my footing amongst those cranky Craigs. But I have to admit, I am relieved once she goes out to take tea with her goats. And now it's going to be all about me.
Brava!
Isn't it wonderful that that was her favorite, that she got gotten in that way?
Yeah.
Susie. This one is called Salome. I want to expose myself to you. I'm not talking about revelation and sequential scenes or protocol illuminations, as in sharing little bites of bio over drinks and the manner in which the menu can be commented upon in the candlelight, synchronicities, fingers brushing as a cigarette is lit, misty lingerings on sprinkled lamp-lit street corners, breathless, clinging in dimly lit doorways, tension-mounted leave-takings pushing morning around, synchronicities again. I'm not talking about revelation occurring in sanguine steps, the pressure of saxophone-obedient thighs imitating tango, or stepping from glass slippers onto the magic carpet just inside the door, jacket shrugged off, tossed onto a nonchalant chair, hat tossed prettily across some secret curtained room, onto a pillow-brimmed bed, the unpinning of the schoolmarm bun, releasing long blonde hair into the custody of caring fingers. Ricky Lee's song seeping in, scuttling self-consciousness. I am not talking about the tintillating incrementals of a thin strap slipping over one slow shoulder, the small, bare something showing on the sliding edge of sweet-smelling satin, or bits of mocha lace, dress whispering finally to the floor. Please understand me. I'm not talking about trailing ribbons, the subtle dropping of veils. I'm talking about exposing myself to you all at once, as in arriving at your door stark naked beneath my sweaty coat. I am talking about streaking your neighborhood at high noon. You know that feeling that you have when you meet somebody that you just fall in love with immediately, and you just want to tell them everything at once. You want this kind of language, you know, that is just, you can just pour it out and know one another. And I think we all look for that language, don't we? So that was what that was about.
Well, I myself am all hot and bothered now after that.
What was the title of that?
That is Salome.
Salome.
Or Salome, some call it. Salome, who did the Dance of the Veils. Scripture. So while we're on that note, I'm going to read you the seduction.
Everyone meet my mommy.
Yeah. I think you've already seduced us,
I was going to
darling.
say, I thought the seduction just happened.
We're already enrolled. It was like, what's next?
fixed.
I think it's the deed that has to happen now.
Which,
The deed.
You know.
let's see, I have little markers in here. Somewhere.
And don't we all want to look like
Yes.
this
Oh.
at 70?
Don't we all want to look like this at any?
Yeah. Yes, yes.
Well, I wrote down the wrong, thank you.
Take your time, Mom.
We love you.
Baby.
I wrote
We
down,
love you.
I wrote down the wrong page number for this one, but I'm going to look it up because I really want to read it to you. While we're all in this mood.
You've got so.
It is steamy.
This is the seduction.
Uh-oh.
Night is out and on a spree. He slips his straps smoothly, ribbon thin. Over Day's white shoulders, he skims her length in satin black to just above the knee. He slicks her legs in silk with seams looking down their backs. Her sequin shoes, it seems, are little more than little traps, but hooves. He places pearls upon her throat, with the single strand, of course. She seems surprised and then remote. And then that look comes to her eyes. She gazes now through the perfect little veil of her perfect little hat with the little velvet band, then smiles that smile that reveals a somehow fact, while like a cat all slant and amber-eyed, Day no longer sees. She can't. She simply feels. She sighs, stretches, and succumbs to night's mysteries. The long-stemmed rose in a crystal vase, the long-stemmed glass on a table of lace. In her long lashed glance, no thought of after or regret. Soon they dance. Gay laughter as he lights her cigarette. The moon is out, the stars are in, the wine is right, oh, of course, the violin. In the candlelight, how she does glisten. She thinks she hears her mother call. Oh, she hears, but does she listen? Ah, poor thing. She is an easy mark for this master of cliché. In just 3 moves, she's checked and swept away. So goes night. So much for day. And this is a kind of a favorite for a lot of my fans. Black. I am the color black. I ride on the luminous raven's back. I reside in that complex where colors converge. Out of me, the thoughts of genius emerge. I am the epitome. I am the ace of spades. I am cool, I am shade, I am rebel and renegade. I hang out in alleys and make you afraid. I am the inside of a grin. I am scale, I am skin, I am the fin of the shark that slices the sea. I am dark, yet children love to play in me. Ollie, ollie, oxen, free, free, free. I take naps beneath the willow tree. I am the favorite color of Jim. I deliberate. I am never a whim. I point the way. I delineate. I define and I indicate. I am the shape of words on paper. rivers on maps, Roman numerals on clocks, 8 balls and bullseyes, and the feathers of fighting cocks. I'm a proper caper, I rate. For patent leather and dress socks, any other color but me would be a total catastrophe. I am paradox. I am predictable to the point of cliche, yet full of surprise, I'm just fine that way. I am the siren who sings from the sea, the crack in the mirror, the mystery. I am under the bed in the nursery. Never explained or fully known, I lie with the lizard beneath the stone. I ride with the desperado, I hide in his gun. I am lace for the lady, I am robe for the nun. For the poet, well, for the poet, I am the only one. There is no place I have not been, why in heaven they call me the devil's friend. Look at the sky, you will find that I am the space that stars happen in, and also the place where witches fly. Yet cozy as the breast of an angel am I, for I am the blanket of night. I am the air beneath the wings of all things that at sunset take flight, like for instance the moth and the bat. Remember, I am black. I absorb light. Without me, where would she be? Or for that matter, white. Ever think of that? Or this? I am the lot where lips come together and kiss. I am the knock at the door of bliss. I am the footstep that tips down the hall, the moan on the other side of the wall. I am the secret you never tell. Not to mention the fact that I am companion to the blind and the inner workings of the mind, the center around which the whirlpool whirls. I am perfect with pearls and I go great with red. I am right for every occasion. Elegance personified is what I am. One need take no chance, for I am appropriate, perennial, in. I am worn with gardenias by beautiful women. I am the tie and tails worn by gentlemen. There's more, of course, but most important of all, I am the tuxedo Satan wore when he invited Eve to the ball, to the fall. Thank you.
Wow.
That's my new favorite one.
And the family favorite because,
Mad. That's a family favorite.
And more than a family favorite. It's a favorite.
well, your family.
Excellent response.
Yeah, my kids began calling this, I call it the midnight watch. And this poem is about breaking all the rules. It's like you're not supposed to do this if you're a poet. You're not supposed to do that. You can't use the same word twice in the same poem. You can never use the word beautiful, and you can only use the word moon 10 times in your entire life, and on and on. No cliches whatsoever, and I love cliches. I think, how did you get to be a cliche? Because obviously there's something very significant here, or you wouldn't have been around for so long. So I decided to gather up every cliche I could think of and make a poem. And it just turned, I didn't know how it was going to turn out. It turned out to be the midnight watch, and my family started calling it the family tradition. And there's even a story that at one point when Shannon and Shyla were out on the town, that Shannon had a little too much to drink and was in the bathroom of the bar throwing up And Charlotte was standing over her, reciting parts of this poem to her.
Distraction.
Oh, thank you. I can do that. Why? That's too funny.
I am mad, 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 you see. Mad as the gypsy's feet. I tear my hair, I dance on bars and never miss a beat. Ha 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 ha, I cry, the piper I will pay. But hell or high water come, I will pipe this night away. I keep the tavern in the town, I gather in the sheep. Go tell Irene, the night is young. No, there is no time to sleep. Ba, ba, ba. Ba, ba, indeed. We'll take it on the chin and keep the midnight watch till those saints come marching in. I burn the candle at both ends and I light the sailor's way. I welcome home the world weary and home the drunkard pray. Never keep a good man down. To the boys in the back room seat, let there be a song for Lily Marlene. Oh, let there be a song for me. Let's play. Let's play, I say. Let's go out on a spree. Let's hitch and hike and ride the rails. The boogeyman's afraid of me. Take a walk on the wild side. Ride the Ferris wheel. Tomorrow is too late, my love. The moment we must steal. Let's love. Oh, yes. Let's love, I sigh. Let's give this old town a whirl. Let's kiss and tell and not get caught, and I will be your girl. We'll chase the wind and waves and run up on the beach. Howl at the moon, my love. It will soon be out of reach. Yes, I am mad, 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 you see. Mad as a gypsy's feet. Brag, brawl, and shout, and hang the luck, but hang not a name on me. Tomorrow, we may die, 'tis true. But tonight we paint the town. And when the night is over, I shall burn my gown. So, I want to, because of the talk today about our ancestry and our beginnings and seeking that information that comes down through our bloodlines and of which we're made aware of maybe during the midnight watch, and that you're wondering about those pieces. And so I want to read a beginning for me called Where These Spells Began, or How These Spells Began. And I have something really significant to say about it, but I've forgotten what it is.
Is it about your mother, Karen?
Yes. Yes, Mary, thank you. This is about, people not thinking that they are a poet, and that I'm convinced that spells have been cast upon us when we were children, and if we can go back to those spells, and we can, I don't care how much of our brain we got left, we can return to that spell of when you first noticed that what later would be referenced as simple things or down-home things or everyday things, that if you start naming them and calling them in, you'll have poetry. This is how these spells began for Eden. Eden is in her sunroom, surrounded by a jungle of house plants. Her Garden of Eden. It is morning, her time of day. A spider in the corner of the window screen annexes silver and magenta veined leaves from the wandering Jew in her doily domain. A tiny lizard suns herself on the toe of Eden's slipper. Eden is standing at her ironing board. She's sewing, of course. A Wonder Woman costume for my doll. And frowning her famous frown of intense concentration. That frown which I diligently practiced throughout my childhood. Because my mother is beautiful. And I want to look as much like her as I can, as soon as possible. And while in that vein, another one about ancestry. It's called Common Ancestry. I never knew your old grandfather. I barely knew my own. And now it is we who are old and on the edge of time and continent, driving highways 1 and 101, peering into the mists of gull-ridden shores, searching for signs of who we were and where we've been. Suddenly, my eyes find your hands upon the wheel oddly familiar. They are veined like the back sides of leaves, and I think, these are your grandfather's hands that I see. I watch these hands move between wheel and gear, these artist's hands, sensitive as antenna or cat's whiskers, and also as true and strong as a carpenter's square. These hands work. They get the job done. These are the hands of an old Scandinavian, of my own grandfather, of my own father, of my own self, and I realize we are bound not just by love, but by our pre-recorded memories. Thousands of miles are mapped from Viking seas. Thousands of years of coded genes inform our histories. Thousands of stories are written in our salty blood and bone and in our hands' geographies. And I'm just going to read you my favorite poem. This is my, what do they call it, your signature piece. Just in case we have to run out of the building before I'm done. And it's called Gull, and some of you have read it before because I actually did a painting with Shiloh for this poem and actually tried to follow the 13 steps and became extremely frustrated and because I graph everything before I paint it, you know. And she was teaching me her 13 steps and making it look so easy.
Of course. Yep.
And I'm like, but I finally finished it, the painting, and this was the poem that inspired the painting, and it's called Gull, one of my totems. Gull. While I was yet Adam's rib, God called your name out of me, closing the back of the throat and shaping it there, like your first egg, carving a hollow in the roof of the mouth swelling it against root of tongue, tongue curling back on itself, and then touching its tip to the back of the teeth like the index finger finding her thumb for the first time. And then hooking that final webbed claw between shoulder blades and demanding, speak or die. All this Gull, while you waited to be spoken alive. Gull, yours was a violent birth, choked into creation, splitting the universe and engraving the air with the ciphers and glyphs of flight and a remembrance of wings. And God shouted, "Let there be freedom." And God saw that it was good. And God commanded me to wait, even as you, Gull, had waited. Commanded me to rest there, next to my husband's heart, in that helix of DNA, in that curve that giving birth to your name had caused, in that curve that would be translated rib, in that rib that would be translated form, in that form that would be translated woman, in that woman that would be translated Eve, mother of all living. In that mother of all living that would be translated bitter. In that bitter that would be translated Mary. All this, Gull, so that God could enter earth and all her poetry hang on a dead tree, and with human ears hear your cry. A rather long poem, but
We have the rest of our lives. We have the rest of our lives. What about red?
I was just gonna say red,
Red.
please, red.
Red is an entire book. I mean, it's a whole chapbook.
The rest of our lives.
What about the white-haired woman?
No.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Oh.
It's called A Lot Can Happen Within a Few Minutes of Dancing for Carmen Baraka. March 2010. Once upon a time, not so long nor so far away, but at a recent and nearby Cosmic Cowgirl hootenanny, an old silver-haired Scandinavian woman was asked to dance by a beautiful young Apache woman with fire in her eyes. The old woman hesitated, for she was already worn out from a long day and a long night and much dancing. And the music playing now was very fast and of Latino flavor. Even in her youth, living in Mexico and dancing all night on the beaches and in the streets and colonias during festival with the macho young men in possession of a strong lead, though like her mother, she had always been a good dancer, her Scandinavian hips had always imposed a certain restraint. But these fleeting thoughts were too late at the onset, for her body had already flown into the arms of the young woman. She had fallen hopelessly under the spell of this fire-eyed beauty. Their eyes locked and never lost their connection, not even during the turns and twists and spins as music and motion and passion propelled them faster and further into the deepening whirlwind night. The old woman thought back to when she was young and full of fire herself, and how she had asked her lovely old Italian mother-in-law, Annie, whom she had adored, to dance with her at the firemen's ball. Taking Annie into her arms, she had whirled her across the floor as she had not been whirled since the death of her husband. Years later, when Annie's son had to tell his mother that the daughter-in-law who had danced her to the moon had left him, his mother slapped him hard in the face, crying, "You go and get her and bring her back to us." She had not returned, but she had marveled that Annie continued to beg him to bring her the biscotti that she so loved. And tonight, she understood how she and Annie had come to belong to each other. She thought of how she, when her own mama died, had made an altar with blue chiffon and white candles and white lilies and her mother's little black size 5.5 T-strap high-heeled dancing shoes. And how her mother and she and her own daughter had laughed upon discovering that they had all bought these same shoes. Not knowing the other had also. They were amazed, but they were not surprised. And she thought how that daughter who, like mother and grandmother, so loved to dance, had become so sick that she could barely walk. She thought of her prayers, "Please, please, my Elohim, may it be your will that I see my dancing child yet dance again," and was now filled anew with the glory and the gratitude she felt as a witness to the answer that night. Her daughter did rise in strength and beauty to grace the ballroom floor. And then as music and the dancing went on, she thought of her friend Rafa, the legendary dancer of the Anderson Valley, and how one night he had just dropped dead of a heart attack on the dance floor. And how every time this part of his story was told, which was often, everyone said, "Hallelujah, bravo, and amen," because they knew that was the way Rafa was meant to die. There was a moment of fear as she remembered that only a month or so ago she had been taken to emergency due to suspicious heart activity. But then she recalled being so grateful that before this had happened, the name of her Elohim had been shown to her in a vision, and how lying in the clamor of the hospital night she had refused the drugs and called upon that name. She was comforted, at peace, and warm, because she knew that she was no longer afraid to die. The fire in her partner's eyes reminded her of how in her vision, the fire of that Hebrew letter, Shin, had dropped down to divide the tetragrammaton dead center and then rejoined the hand to the sword to make the name, which upon her breath she now called. And the dancers laughed and surrendered themselves. And the eyes of the hurricane, where the beat that locked the tension between the two lifted them as though they were weightless. And the music and the dancing went on, and the dancing was easy. The dancing was as easy as dancing to the Leonard Cohen song, "Dance Me to the End of Love." Dance me to your beauty with a burning violin. Dance me through the panic till I'm gathered safely in. Lift me like an olive branch and be my homeward God. Dance me to the end of love. Dance me to the end of love. When the music stopped, the women released each other in laughter and in love and in exclamation. "You salsa!" exclaimed the younger. "Not really," exclaimed the older. "I could never have danced this way had you not taken possession of me. You have such a strong lead. I could have followed you to the end of earth and sky." "Oh, but it was you who led," said the young one, her dark eyes suddenly surprised and soft, her sweet voice certain. "I was following you. I could have followed you to the moon." Just then, the intuitive Stella Mac put Bonnie Raitt back on the sound system, and she was singing, "Let's give them something to talk about." For the 5th time that night, and everyone was singing along. The old silver-haired Scandinavian woman and the beautiful young Apache woman with her fire in her eyes disappeared back into the circle. Years later, whenever this part of the Cosmic Cowgirl legend was told, which was often, Chief Laughing Cloud would laugh and say, "Yep, I was there, and that's just exactly the way it was."
When this woman and I first met, in the first 5 minutes of conversation, we talked about long-legged cowboys.
Long-legged redheads.
We talked about how important language is. We talked about how important a conversation was everything. We talked about, oh, I can't talk about those things that we talked about. But one of the things that happened for me with Caron is that she gave me new eyes. She gave me new eyes to look at things. And through our laughter and our tears and our way that we, and it was about the poetry and the language and the way to look at the pain in our lives and the way to look at, you know, you talk about how Sue taught you about composting. You taught me about that, you know, and that language is so important, and that one of the things that Caron taught me is when I do the work that we do in Cosmic Cowgirls around legend and all the other courses that we do, or even in my own coaching practice where we talk about how you show up in the world and about how important when you take language and you are conscious about the language and that you voice it. And I can read Caron's poetry. You can go and buy, and I hope you will too, buy her poetry book because she's a brilliant poet.
I bet the good stuff is pretty well sold. I'm getting this one covered.
All right, good. To hear her speak her words, to speak her language, it is so important for you to stand up, and that's what she teaches us. Is to speak your language and speak your words and speak your vision. Claim who you want to show up and claim your language and claim your words, and to sit in, and here we are in a community that we are in the ability to stand up, and we're vulnerable and we shake. Even Caron still shakes.
I do.
Right? It's like as you get up there and it's the most vulnerable thing in the world. Right?
Yes, it is.
So talk to us about that, about claiming and voicing.
Well, I want to say that it made it a lot easier. It's like, have a hard time on phone calls because I can't see the people's faces and read their body language. And Mary wanted to interview me for the Cosmic Crones course, and the closer it got to the time for the interview, the more terrified I became. And she called me like a little bit before, and she said, I said, Mary, I said, I don't even have to get up in front of the room and the front of the people, but I'm just afraid I'm going to blank out. And she said, this is Stella Mack, honey. I've got your back. Oh. And I went, you do have my back. Yeah. Why would I even question that? Of course you've got my back. I knew that if I faltered that she'd be sensitive to it and she'd immediately come in with something to put me back on track. And to have somebody in your corner like this really helps a lot. And I want you to know that she's in your corner like that. Mm-hmm.
This is about her, not me.
This is about her. The thing is that stage fright. We are so afraid to put it out there, especially when you're talking about things as personal as this, you know, like sometimes people think that you're kind of crazy. Hunty.
They're right.
And, but the thing is, you know, whether you get up here or not, you're going to be afraid. We live with fear. We live with the fear of they're not going to love me. We're going to be rejected. You know, they didn't get it. I don't want to say that in front. What are they going to think? We live with that. And so since we're going to be with it anyway, why not just go ahead and give them something to talk about?
Karen.
Isaac Stern was interviewed on the Johnny Carson show, and
Stella Mack wasn't available at the time.
that's true. She was, or I wouldn't have been watching the Johnny Carson show. And Isaac Stern had just been in a rock climbing accident, and a rock fell on his violinist hand, and Johnny Carson said, I'll bet the first thing that went into your mind was, I'll never be able to play again. And Isaac Stern said, that's right, that was the first thing, and I was so relieved. And Johnny Carson said, you're the greatest violinist in the world, why would you be relieved? And he said, because I am so terrified to get up in front of the audience. And he's like, after all these years, he said, I get so sick, I get so frightened, I sweat, I get diarrhea. You know, he said, I'm just terrified to stand up and play the violin in front of an audience. And Johnny said, well, then why do you do it? And he said, well, God gave me this gift. I have to share it. So, you know, God has given each of us a gift, and there's many ways and combinations of how we can share that. And as someone said earlier today, there's only one of you. You're the only one that can bring your particular experience of what that dragonfly over the pond looked like. You know, you're the only one that can tie that to something that you thought of when you were afraid and you were calmed by it. You know, it's like, this is the stuff that gets us through. And this is the stuff that helps us get each other through. And it says that we were created in the image of the Creator. Therefore, for me, the very first commandment is, thou shalt create. So, keep it up.
Yay!
The reason that Karen and I are standing here and fell in love with each other immediately,
No hesitation.
none whatsoever, was because of this person that she birthed, called Sophia Mcloud, that I had fallen deeply in love with, and would continue to follow at the ends of the earth. And Karen is the reason that I'm here, because I went to Cosmic Cowgirls, and I'm going to tell that story, if you'll indulge me.
As soon as I met Mary, I went to Shiloh and I said, do you know that person we've been looking for to be in partnership with our dreams and all that we want to do? And she said, yeah. I said, well, she was at Cosmic Cowgirls today. And it's Mary MacDonald. And Shiloh said, oh. And I said, yes. And Mary said, and Mary went and prepared a proposal.
26-page marketing proposal.
And gave it to Shiloh, and Shiloh said, you're right, she is the one.
Well, actually, she said, but I had a painting class with Mary, and she didn't speak to me at all. Like, I just don't, I don't understand.
Mary and I had not had a conversation yet.
We hadn't, and I took an hour and a half painting class with Shiloh. And it
And I
was-
attended the Cosmic Cowgirls conference and didn't speak to me.
And
Maybe
didn't-
like this whole weekend and you not talking to me.
Yes. So there was a reason why she thought, why are you saying that Mary is a person? And it was because I thought, I felt like I was in with a rock star with Shiloh. I was so freaking intimidated that I couldn't say a word. I was like, and in our workshops, I talk about how Shiloh and I had never painted, ever. And I was 50 years of age. And I found Shiloh because I went to a healing center with a woman that owned it then, that was a friend of Shiloh's and became a friend of mine. And one of Shiloh's journals, She Moves, was there. And I flipped through the journal, and within 3 seconds, I turned to my friend and I said, I am going to work with this woman one day. Because I had just been doing workshops for over 300 schools around bullying and self-esteem, and the kids just didn't, they were just like, and I was doing like things that were really exciting to the world, and they were like, and I saw Shiloh's stuff and I'm like, this is the stuff I need to do, right? And so I knew that I was going to work with her, and I went off into the world. And I went back to Canada and I sent an email and I said, I hear you're doing a workshop and I'm in Canada and I'd really like to come. And I never made it. And so I thought, what else is a girl to do but to move to California? Right? And it was, and so Shiloh believed her mother. Because they have that relationship with one another. And Shiloh said, Mama, if you believe that this is the woman, then let's have lunch with her. And we went to lunch together in Fort Bragg, and Shiloh was like, okay, let's make this work.
And you talked.
And we talked, and we knew that we were souls together, right? And so it is Caron was the reason I am sitting here, and standing here and being with the women in my life that have brought me more love and joy than I've ever had in my life. And so I owe so much to Caron. And so one of the things that I would love to do is to have her daughter, Shiloh, come up and talk about her mother and what it is about her mother that has...
Well, everything to do, yeah, I would love that. I would absolutely love that. And just
Need
get
some
you
lipstick.
primed.
You go get lipstick, Carol will talk.
I'm going, what I was dealing with that I don't think I'll ever resolve is the fact that I'm in Port Townsend and there's the best reasons in the world for me to be there, and Shiloh's down here. Mary's in Canada with the best reasons in the world, like they'll put her in jail if they catch her now.
We're willing to take the risk.
And so if you'll stand here and with me a moment, I want to share about missing Shiloh, and I don't think that I'll ever resolve that. And people say, well, can't you just call her more often? I say, you don't get it. It's about just in an everyday situation, maybe sitting at the table in the kitchen and glancing up, you know, not thinking anything, just glancing up to say something to her and catching my breath because of the way that the light is touching her face. And you don't get that on the phone. So when she left Port Townsend, there was a restaurant that we used to go to called Bread and Roses. And so I went back there and she was gone. It's called another Gull poem. I told him, you stay here because this is for you too, because I know you miss her so much. Called Beneath Her Snowy Wing. Sitting out on the deck at Bread and Roses, drinking foamy cafe latte beside the budding tree, I remember that gull who swooped so low that for a split second Your cherry blossom face was framed by the underside of her snowy wing. Now, morning dew falls from a branch into it, glistening up on the dark green tabletop as a finch hops down, looking for a crumb from your coconut cake. She flies away empty, and no Gull comes. For you are no longer here with me to shine beneath her snowy wing.
All right. It's the Stella Max show with two of my favorite women on the planet. And her mother, Caron McCloud, both poets, both writers, both painters, both visionaries. The reason why we're here is this woman with the hat to my left that gathers women in magical circles, that all of us, no matter what our age, what our spiritual tradition, what color we are, what height we are, she brings us all together, and it's a magical thing. I think I've been in a lot of women's community, and I have to say, when I left Canada, I said, I will never be in women's community ever again. I did, and I love women. And then all of you, Cosmic Cowgirls, what this woman created is beyond anything I think is on the planet. I think it's really magical. And
Me too!
Me too.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shiloh, for gathering us, for doing your work, for bringing your magic into the world. It's an honor, it's a privilege. I love you beyond the moon and the stars. And your lips are just fabulous. And so I am going to let these two women
That was beautiful.
create magic.
That was so beautiful. I feel like I can never tell you how amazing Sue and my mom are. But now you got to see it. Can you see?
Yeah. Amazing mama. She's an amazing mama.
And just like her perspective, the noticing of really like history of people and cliche and poetry and literature and music, like just the breadth of understanding that a poet has as time passes. I feel like she captures in language, and the only real context for the world I have is from her poetry. Like I know about things because she mentioned them in the time frame in which they occurred in the universe. And I think that all of you have heard this story before. There are a million amazing things to say about my mom. And for the moms and the aunties, like, my mother never shamed me.
Wow.
Never. That didn't mean I didn't get in trouble. But she never made me feel bad about myself.
Right.
She never spoke to me in such a way that I had an experience of personal guilt or shame or that I was wrong. Like, my whole life. Even now, if we get in a tangle, it's just a tangle, but it's not because something's wrong with me. And I think that that way of loving and uplifting me, combined with Sue's encouragement of my creativity, has made it so that I could do what I'm doing now and invite you to it, because I'm really not super hung up about whatever it is. Like, I don't even know what it is. There's just nothing to tell about it other than the beauty of the perspective that the women in my life and that my mom brought to me. And she would send me to my room to memorize T.S. Eliot instead of doing chores. She bought me a drawing table and instruments of art instead of encouraging me to do the things that other girls were doing. Like, she really encouraged my creative identity. She was so radical, and Catherine will appreciate this so much as I've been worrying about the girls like being exposed to our body behavior. But she assured me that she exposes them enough on her own. But in my early teens, my mom bought me this just ridiculous book by one of the first out gay men, like, in the world, named Quentin Crisp, who wore lipstick and who was out as himself to the point of persecution and death. And he wrote about being himself in a world where you were not supposed to be yourself, and it was called Naked Civil Servant. And I was 15 or 14, and she gave me this book. Like, that's crazy town, right? And she's like, this person is original. You should do everything you can to be original. Without fear. And when I became an overly obsessed, what do you call those? Like Christian people who are like,
Bible thumpers.
Bible thumpers. Yeah, I became that. I'm still kind of like that. I never recovered. But like, I had a time where I was like that and I told others to be like that. Now I'm only like that privately. But I became that, and I told Mom, oh no, people are going to go to hell for all these terrible behaviors. And what am I going to do? And da, da, da. Do you know what she did? 2 really crazy things that changed my life. Sorry, Mom, I gotta tell him. Now I'm a little older. She buys me a Prince album. And puts a half-naked picture of Prince on my ceiling. No, I'm not kidding. You know what she tells me? He loves God more than you do.
Wow.
And so you think you know who loves God? Not only that, we're getting in the car. Get in the car! So we get in the car. We lived in Boonville. We drove for hours to San Francisco, to the Tenderloin District. And we went to Glide Memorial Church. On my new little holy roller self, I didn't even have like a Izod like shirt on. I was trying really hard. This happened. We go to church and we sit down, and I'm like, my mantra is, I am not gonna have fun. I will not have fun. And Mom's just like, da-da-da, waiting for the choir. Da-da-da. She knows I'm gonna fall out. The choir starts singing.
They lined up across.
They lined up, and they're in tie-dye robes, every color, every orientation of being, and they start singing "Celebrate Good Times" by Kool and the Gang as the opening. And all of a sudden, I burst into tears. I'm racking sobs. I'm like this teenager, like sobbing in that thing. And Mom's like this. They love God more than you. And we're sitting next to this lady, this super tall black lady named Frances, in full red, lipstick, spike heels, cleavage, the whole thing. And she's holding hands with me, and I love her because she's beautiful. And then we go to join Glide Church after, because now I'm a convert. This is not a performance. We're in the thing, and I am crazy for Frances because she's crazy for me. I'm like, this woman is like unbelievable. And then she talks about becoming Frances from Frank. And passes the pictures. And my mom's like, she's married to Jesus. And Frances said, Jesus is my husband. I will have no other husband. And Mom's like, see, this is what love looks like. You don't have any idea what you're talking about. And I fell madly in love with Frances, and we were friends for years. And she changed my whole reality
Huh.
of like expanding what the love of God looks like. And praise God, because that day in my experience that my mom helped create for me, that Christ dropped judgment about others in that moment. Like it lays on the ground floor of my church at that age, where I could be fully in love with my own tradition and have not even anything to think about anyone else's tradition. Like it was removed from me like an initiation, and she created that experience through showing me what the love of the Creator actually looked like. That's how my mom raised me. This is who this being is, and this is who we can be for each other. To recontextualize even those terrible behaviors of righteousness and judgment and bigotry and separatism and everything, and transform it into something beautiful. She made it not something like that I was wrong for. She transformed it into something that was actually beautiful, and taught me to be that in myself, and that if I could be originally myself, that there was nothing that was actually more important. And that is a very radical thought for any human being of any age or time frame to have, let alone be fearless enough to pass on to a girl child that you are perfect exactly as you are. Really? That's so amazing.
Mommy.
Are we cut? Okay, well, so the other day in Circle, Catherine asked the question, what would it be like if every girl child grew up believing that she was the feminine, the divine feminine, right? This is what happens when we grow up without shame. This is what happens when we grow up without shame. And that's what will change the world.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
This is one of the best nights of my life.
Yeah!